What's up guys, my name is Spartan, and in today's video, I am finally bringing you guys the long requested hybrid guide. I'll explain why the sort of a little bit later in the video, but in today's video, I have gotten so many requests about hybrid. When should I transition to hybrid? What should I do to get to hybrid? What does hybrid even mean? And we're gonna cover all of that in this video to hopefully bring some clarity to the concept of the hybrid build, quote unquote. First and foremost, I'm gonna sort of address the elephant in the room. Hybrid is not a build. It is not a build that you can make a guide for. Let me explain. I'll give you some examples of actual builds. There is the Blender build, where effectively you just build pretty much everything, max everything, right? That's the Blender build. There is the Turtle build, Defense Absolute, Thorns, stuff like that. There is the Orb Devo build and the various different Devo variations. Those are builds. Hybrid is a little bit of a different kind of thing. Hybrid is what we would consider a classification of a build, in the same way that you can be EHP Blender, you can be Hybrid Blender, you can be Glass Cannon Blender. Hybrid is not a particular build. It is more so a classification of a build that basically helps you dictate how you are going to sort of build around your specific build that you're doing. So that's the first sort of elephant in the room, right? Hybrid is not a concrete build. There is not a, here's a guide for the hybrid build, because quite frankly, it's a classification. That would be like me making an EHP build guide. And I know what you're thinking. I did make a Glass Cannon build guide, but Glass Cannon kind of is more so a build, but a lot of it can be sort of broken down into, hey, this is a classification of a Blender build. Like my Glass Cannon guide video, it could basically just be called Glass Cannon style Blender build, because quite frankly, that's kind of what it is, right? So now that that sort of elephant in the room is covered, let's go ahead and talk about what hybrid actually means. What is this whole concept of hybrid? Hybrid refers to really two primary things, right? Your EHP and your damage levels. Hybrid is generally considered as sort of the transition phase, one of the transition phases from going from EHP to Glass Cannon. It's not generally something that people will stay at for a long duration of time. That is sort of prior knowledge. Nowadays, the higher echelons of the game are implementing more of a hybrid approach. This will generally be, for the most part, a Glass Cannon structured build with roughly, 70+% damage oriented, and then a little bit of EHP with the intent of sort of tanking overcharge enemies and some other stuff involved as well. So that is generally kind of the premise of what hybrid is. It's a structure for your build that revolves not just around EHP or damage, but implements both of those to kind of work together and give you a really good fighting chance. So now that we've kind of covered that, we have to discuss kind of what that looks like. I will use just like my big tower here as an example, but generally speaking, if you want to kind of follow the sort of traditional path, you will do EHP from tier 1 all the way until about tier 12. Once you hit tier 12 and your farming is EHP, generally speaking for tier 13 and beyond, you would then basically transition into a damage-focused Glass Cannon style build. This is assuming you're farming around 8,000 waves in tier 12. You have really good development in terms of your ultimate weapons, your labs, your enhancements, your lifetime coins, etc. All of this is in a really good spot, right? And then you will generally pivot into a Glass Cannon build for tier 13 and beyond. Because once you start getting into these higher tiers, doing shorter runs becomes a lot more important. So now that we've kind of covered what hybrid means and what it kind of generally looks like a little bit, let's dive a little bit deeper. Within a hybrid build, right? If I'm going to set up a hybrid build for myself, I'll just show you guys on this random example. If I'm going to basically do a respec with my stuff, I'm going to max out all of my stuff. If you are transitioning into hybrid, more than likely you are pretty much around the point where you can, for the most part, max everything out during the run. Not necessarily in the workshop, but during the run. So let's just say for kicks and giggles that I'm going to basically max everything out, except let's just say like wall health and wall rebuild. Let's just say that. So everything else is maxed, but I don't have enough lifetime coins yet to fully max wall health, but it does get maxed during the farming run. Similar kind of thing within the attack workshop. Let's just say that hypothetically I can max damage, attack speed, all of this stuff, right? I can max pretty much everything for the most part, maybe with an exception of, I feel like during the earlier stages of the game, the really expensive thing becomes the rend armor and the rend armor multiplier. So we'll just say for simplicity's sake, same kind of thing with the utilities, right? I mean, I can't even max out enemy level skips yet, but that's okay. But we'll go ahead and max basically everything out, right? So we are effectively running a Blender style build where we max everything out. We rely on free upgrades, we max everything out. Now that we have this baseline, this is hypothetically for this scenario what has brought us to farming tier 12 until about 8,000 plus waves on average. We go to the enhancements. Up to this point, we have not really touched anything in the attack tree, assuming that we're following the more traditional path. We haven't touched anything in the damage, but we have touched quite a bit into the health. I'm just going to tell you guys, this is not necessarily optimal, quote unquote, right? So I'm just going to tell you guys what I personally did. What I personally did when I was in the transition process to Glass Cannon. I put 100 levels in. My health regen, I also was able to put 100 levels. Moving on to the wall health, 100 levels. This was the EHP baseline that I had in terms of my enhancements for the longest time as I was building up my damage to eventually transition into Glass Cannon. I didn't touch orb speed, orb size, or any of this other stuff. It was just 100 levels here, 100 levels here, and 100 levels here. That was my baseline. Similar kind of thing here with cash bonus. I just basically did enough to unlock coins. You know, I put quite a few into coins, and I put quite a few into cells. And at this point, I was still farming with G-Comp, so I don't think I put anything into free upgrades. But if you are farming with Black Hole Digester, 100% put some into free ups, whatever. Then you get to the recovery package. Don't worry about that. And then ELS. ELS is super, super valuable. It's super expensive, as you can see, but it does bring a lot of value to the table. Like I mentioned, this was my baseline for the workshop specifically. Again, back to the base workshop, I basically had everything maxed out with an exception of maybe the wall stuff. In the attack tree, everything maxed out with an exception of the rend armor stuff because 14Q, good lord. And then here, everything maxed out except obviously ELS, because who can max that out? Let's just be honest. Once you get to this similar kind of spot in terms of your EHP development, this is when you want to start implementing damage. So what that begins to look like is transitioning your enhancements first. So just take a look. You want to eventually go for a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of levels. So we put 100 levels into damage, 100 levels into crit factor, and 100 levels into super crit multiplier. At this point as well, attack speed becomes very, very important. So just remember that. If you have the Spotlight Ultimate Weapon Plus, damage per meter becomes super, super important. If you have the Poison Swamp Plus, the Rend Armor becomes super, super important. If you don't have either of those two, quite frankly, just hold off on this. We are running the hybrid build, so we are trying to structure our workshop in such a way that we are eventually getting about a 50-50 split between our damage and our EHP. That is not just the case for the workshop. That expands into other aspects as well. So let me just quickly show you guys on a blank canvas here, kind of the ideal cards that you would start using at this point for your farming runs, right? So we got the blank canvas, right? I think at this point when I was playing, I had roughly, 18, 19, maybe 20 card slots, right? You have obviously your base EHP cards. So your health regen, your extra defense. Those are the base 3, essentially, cards for your survivability. After that, you put in all of your econ cards. So cash, coins, enemy balance, free upgrades because we're running Blender, crit coin, wave skip, recovery package chance if you are using Galaxy Compressor or if you have the mastery. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and put it on because I was using Galaxy Compressor at the time. A little bit further, we have the Wave Accelerator card. So now we have 11 cards with basically all of our econ stuff and our EHP. This is the absolute baseline for your EHP build. This is what you need. If you have additional cards, you can start implementing some crowd control, landmine stun is a no-brainer, super, super good. Slow aura also is pretty good. Attack speed obviously is great, so we'll do that. At this point, you want to start implementing some damage cards. So we already have our baseline in terms of EHP cards, right? And that is with 13 card slots, mind you, for farming. That is 13 card slots. So what we're going to do is we're going to start implementing some damage-oriented cards. The first one I would 100% do is going to be the Berserker card. It's a no-brainer. You get an 8 times damage multiplier that builds over time by you absorbing damage. This is going to be great for hybrid. Additionally, you want ultimate crit. When you start transitioning into hybrid, the value you get from Chain Lightning becomes super, super valuable. And Chain Lightning synergizes super well with Ultimate Crit Mastery. Ultimate Crit and Berserker are both super, super valuable. That puts us at 15 card slots. We still have some flexibility. If you want, you can put stuff in like Demon Mode. If you're actively watching your run, you can put Second Wind in just to buy yourself maybe an extra little bit of waves. Super Tower is great if you have the Mastery. If you don't have the Mastery, quite frankly, I wouldn't really worry about it. Energy Net also becomes very valuable when you start working towards the hybrid build. So you can put in Energy Net. You can also put in Energy Shield if you want, but this doesn't really come into play for hybrid as much. It's mostly for the sake of Glass Cannon, because right now we still have our EHP to kind of fall back on. If you have like Intro Sprint Mastery, absolutely you can equip that. Extra orbs just for some more like boss damage and orb kills, that can be good. Crit chance and damage. This is kind of the setup, right? So that kind of covers the cards. And what we're doing at this stage is we are starting off with just our baseline stuff. So we prioritize this, right? Starting off with the 3 primary EHP cards, because we still have to keep our baseline EHP as we are working towards a hybrid build. We don't just respec our workshop, go 50-50 on both with our current lifetime coins. We want to maintain what we're doing in tier 12 farming, or tier 11 as well. We want to maintain all of that with our EHP baseline and then build off of it by implementing damage. Remember, this is not a build, quote unquote. This is preparing us to inevitably transition into Glass Cannon. We have our 3 main cards here for EHP. Then we implement all of our econ cards: cash, coins, enemy balance, free ups, crit coin, wave skip, and really just wave excel. Recovery package chance if you're using G-Comp or have the mastery. And then we have a lot of flexibility. We can put in crowd control, which is great. Landmine stun, energy net for the stun, the attack speed for knockbacks, really good. And then your damage cards, implementing some of these. So even with this basic setup here, 18 card slots, this will get you 95% of the way. It would be good to add a few other things, right? It would be really good at this point to also put in like a plasma cannon for the bosses, extra orb for more damage, really good. Intro sprint if you have the mastery, death ray if you want to kill your econ. That's a joke. Don't farm with death ray. But anyway, you guys get the picture. This is kind of plus or minus what the card setup would basically look like. And now we will move on to the modules. I'm just going to unequip everything and just kind of go through it line item by line item. And we'll just categorize this, right? So we'll go by category. Starting off with the cannons. Some people at this stage still will not farm with their cannons. A lot of EHP guys will not. I am not farming with a cannon module with Spartan Jr. Once you start transitioning into hybrid, your cannon becomes super, super valuable because it's giving you that damage. So you definitely want to start farming with a cannon. There are 2 primary that I would suggest. If you have the highest rarity is Amplifying Strike, this is a no-brainer. Amplifying Strike is just super, super good. If you want a sort of more balanced approach, you can use Astral Deliverance. This was kind of the quote-unquote meta for the longest amount of time. Astral Deliverance is still really good to this day, but I do feel like in terms of only having 1 slot and only being able to pick 1 module, I still feel like Amplifying Strike will likely be better overall. So we'll just equip the Amplifying Strike. Now moving on to the Generator category. Depending on what your Econ Ultimate weapons kind of look like, right? The best option will either be Black Hole Digester, assuming that you have basically permanent black hole and a sync with your golden bot. That's going to be super, super critical for using Black Hole Digester. If you don't quite have that, you may be better off with Galaxy Compressor just to get that additional uptime. Especially for things like your cell income, Galaxy Compressor is going to be super, super valuable. So for the purposes of this, I personally used Galaxy Compressor, so I will equip Galaxy Compressor. Moving on now to the core category, probably the best in slot, honestly, is going to be Primordial Collapse. The best in slot will be Primordial Collapse. So Primordial Collapse did not exist when I started playing the game. So what we used in the meantime was basically Multiverse Nexus. This is what I used for the longest time, Multiverse Nexus. But this is super, super important. If you lock yourself into Multiverse Nexus, it's not necessarily the wrong answer, but it could be more optimal nowadays to do Primordial Collapse. And I am worried with when this video goes out. I am kind of concerned that we might get like some new modules with version 28 or something. I don't know. But if that does happen, I'll just have to probably like update this. There's a lot of my older videos that I do need to go back and reproduce because they're just there's a lot of value now from some of these new modules. Best in slot is probably going to be Primordial Collapse. You get damage mitigation from the module from your black hole, and by this point you should be relatively close to perma black hole, more than likely. Primordial Collapse is going to be a no-brainer, to be honest. It's just super, super valuable. A close second would be Multiverse Nexus, and on the off chance that you somehow have like 2 ancestral dimension cores, you could use a dimension core. But more than likely at this point, because we're trying to build into hybrid, we're trying to build into it. So maintaining our EHP baseline, this module here, Primordial Collapse, would give us the best overall shot of that. In terms of substats, you probably don't necessarily need to have all of the same stuff that I have. Some really good stuff would be like Death Wave quantity, Golden Tower duration is huge. If you already have permanent everything, you can do like basically the same stats that I have. If you have a natural sync with your ultimate weapons, you probably don't want to have like Golden Tower cooldown, for example, or Death Wave cooldown, because as you can see, they're slightly offset by 1 second. But you can get things like Golden Tower duration, Golden Tower bonus, Death Wave quantity, Spotlight angle, different things like that, right? And if you want, you can also have something damage oriented. You could have like a Chain Lightning quantity, Chain Lightning chance, something like that. And then last but not least, in terms of the modules, let's cover the armor. Probably the best in slot, but I am going to give you 2 options for the initial first part of moving into hybrid. Probably the best in slot is going to be Orbital Augment, if I had to guess. Orbital Augment is just so valuable. Some key substats will be like knockback chance, orbs, orb speed. Wall rebuild is great, but later on when you get to glass cannon, knockback force is great. Landmine radius is pretty good if you're using the landmine stun card. Death Defy is always a good idea. Shockwave frequency is not necessary, but it does help a little bit with crowd control. I just have it on there because I have ACP as my assist mod. So this is going to be the first main one that you may want to look into. Other than that, at the very start, you may get better results with Sharp Fortitude. You will need to test both of these just to see which one performs the best. In my case, like on Spartan Jr., right now, Orbital Augment is definitely outperforming Sharp Fortitude. But do your own testing and see which one of those 2 really makes it or breaks it for you. At some point later on, once you achieve in the workshop, the 50-50 split between your enhancements and your lab development starts getting a lot better in terms of your damage labs being brought up to match up with what you have for your EHP labs. At that point, you can experiment if you want to and implement Anti-Cube Portal. When I was doing hybrid, keep in mind, both of these modules did not exist. Whoops. Orbital Augment did not exist. Sharp Fortitude did not exist. So I personally used Anti-Cube Portal. I'm pretty sure I used like Space Displacer for the longest time. And then eventually, once my damage was high enough, I transitioned into using the Anti-Cube Portal. You can do this, but the Anti-Cube Portal still probably, unless your damage is just super developed, you'll probably be better off again with Orbital Augment overall. Orbital Augment is just super good. I would even say it's probably S tier, best in slot in terms of the armor modules currently. For the purposes of this, we will go ahead and equip Orbital Augment. So this is our base setup. Moving on now to the labs, right? I'm just going to tell you guys, I don't know exactly. I don't want to say here are some minimum requirements, right? Because quite frankly, everyone's tower looks a little bit different. What works for me may not work for you, may not work for this guy, you know? It's just everyone's tower is developed differently. Everybody's RNG is different. There's so many variables, so it's almost impossible to say, get this lab to this specific number, you know? Obviously, you will want to make sure that you have a lot of your econ labs virtually maxed at this point. Your chain lightning labs are going to become super, super important. The shock chance, bringing that lab up, obviously the chain lightning shock, and the shock multiplier. These 3 labs are going to become very, very important for the purposes of implementing damage. You can also work on some of these other labs if you want, like the chain thunder lab is pretty good for kind of mitigating some of the damage. But it won't really help you with adding damage. It'll strictly just kind of be a way to, you know, further mitigate damage. And similar kind of thing with the chronofield reduction. Reduces damage with enemies inside of chronofield. So that's kind of it for the ultimate weapon labs. Obviously, if there's anything else in here that brings you damage, like Swamp Rend, if you have a build that revolves around Swamp, would be really good. One thing, don't touch the Deathwave armor stripping lab. I've heard from pretty high up there players that it's not a great idea to sort of mess with that. I don't know if I screwed myself over or not, so I'm just telling you guys what I've been told, I guess. The Deathwave damage is kind of garbage. It's additive damage. It's not multiplicative, so it's pretty bad. The Lightning Amplifier for the Scatter, this one's a pretty good lab. Especially if you are struggling with Scatter enemies, you can get that lab developed. It'll be a good idea. For the most part, if you guys go back and look at my lab guide that I made, where I kind of go through a lot of these, that would be a probably good video to kind of give you a solid baseline for kind of the path that you want to take. The main thing in terms of talking about EHP labs, I will just tell you guys what my EHP labs were at the time when I transitioned into hybrid. So my wall regen lab, my wall regen was 150%, so level 15. My wall thorns lab was exactly where it is right now, 12%, aka level 12. My wall fortification was 500%, which I believe is level 25. The rest of the stuff, the only other lab that I had fully maxed was wall health. My wall rebuild had not been touched, my wall invincibility had not been touched, but now it's a really good idea to do the wall invincibility, and it's only 10 levels. But yeah, those were the baseline levels for my actual wall. Additionally, make sure that like your orb boss hit is maxed, your orb speed is maxed, that's super valuable. Level 23 defense percent, or level 18 if you have the extra 2% relic for defense percent. Defense absolute, obviously garbage. Health and health regen. So when I transitioned to hybrid, both of these were at level 35. And I know what you're thinking, that sounds crazy, but what I initially did, I had the intent of going to glass cannon from the start. So I basically asked some high up players that were several stages ahead of me, right? I said, hey, I don't want to waste any lab time. I don't want to overdevelop anything that maybe I don't want to. My end goal, long term, is to get to glass cannon. So what levels do I need for my EHP stats to sort of get to that without wasting any lab time? And this is what they told me in terms of the wall labs. Then, like I said, for the health and health regen, level 35 for both of these. That was the baseline, and it worked for me. Was it a little bit challenging? Sure. Could I have benefited by taking everything a little bit higher? Which obviously I inevitably ended up doing, because remember, all of this was before fleets were introduced. So if I had to sort of change kind of the advice, if I had to put a baseline on it, I would still say max out wall health. It's quick. It's 50 levels, but it's very quick and not too expensive. Just get it done. Wall regen, probably get it to a minimum of 150. Wall thorns, similar thing, get it to 12%. Wall fortification, though, this one becomes a little bit more important. I would take this one a little bit higher, maybe like level 30 at a minimum, 35, something like that. Whatever gets you to around like 600% would probably be a good baseline. And for health and health regen, I would honestly get both of these up to level 50. If I'm being totally honest, get both of these up to level 50 at an absolute minimum, right? Mine are currently at level 60, and that's been more than sufficient for what I need. Moving on to the damage labs. I'm just going to start with the big three. The damage, attack speed, and crit factor. These three are super, super important. If I had to put a priority on any of them, it would honestly be attack speed. Attack speed is going to be number one on the list of like what you would want to max out first. Followed by that, what I did was I just did like 5 levels in damage followed by 5 levels of crit factor, and I just did that over and over until they were both maxed. And now obviously I'm working on damage per meter. This is solely because of my Spotlight Plus. I have the the Ultimate Weapon Plus for Spotlight light range, which gives me a additional Spotlight bonus based on my damage per meter. So therefore I want to increase my damage per meter, obviously. Super crit, both of these are very, very good, but they do get where they take quite a bit of time, so just keep that in mind. Then Rend Armor Multiplier is mostly, again, going to be applicable for kind of coordinating with Poison Swap if you are using Poison Swap as a damage source. But for most of us, we will probably go the path of Chain Lightning. Just statistically speaking, most people will kind of fall into Chain Lightning because of how easy it is to kind of get started. With that, attack speed becomes super important, as well as all of these, damage and crit factor. That's kind of all I can really think of for the labs. Obviously, I say this every time I bring up labs, but don't neglect your module labs, please. Get all of these done. Common Drop, Shatter Shards, all of these. Get all of these done. The only one you don't really need is Unmerge modules unless you just want to. And then module coin cost. This doesn't become super important until way, way later when you just want to get a nice little discount. So yeah, that is going to cover it for basically the labs. Let's actually talk about the ultimate weapons because I didn't really touch on that very much. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So obviously, before doing any of this, the main priority is going to be getting your permanent black hole. That's going to be very important. So permanent black hole, ideally without Galaxy Compressor, but that can be a longer term goal. With Galaxy Compressor is totally fine as well. Maintain the sync with your ultimate weapons, your Golden Trinity. If you have a 2-to-1, that is totally fine. 2-to-1 meaning black hole activates permanently, and then your Death Wave and Golden Tower both go off at the same time. So totally fine to do that. In terms of other ultimate weapons, right? At this point, you might be close to getting to Golden Combo if you basically buy stone packs. If you're more free to play, you're not going to have as many ultimate weapons, right? You're just not. So you can follow the guide that I produced basically with what order you should pick your ultimate weapons in. But the last one you should pick is Smart Missiles because they freaking suck. I'll just save you a little bit of time. Chain Lightning development is going to become super, super important. I have not changed it since I transitioned into Glass Cannon. So this has kind of been the minimum for me. Quantity maxed, chance maxed, and then quite a bit of damage. Your damage does not necessarily have to be this high for the hybrid stage. If you get it around 500 at an absolute minimum, I think that would be a good baseline to get started. But eventually you'll want to take it up to around 800. Then, if you want to dip into the thousands, by all means, go for it. Or if you want to experiment with some of these other ultimate weapons, you can absolutely do that as well. But that's kind of the baseline. It becomes you get your econ ultimate weapons set up in such a way where your econ is squared away. You are getting the coins necessary to continue to pump into your damage stuff. And yeah, at that point, you can start working on some of the damage ultimate weapons, like the crowd control from inner landmines by just, getting the cooldown down a little bit, maxing the quantity. The poison swamp, going for a permanent poison swamp. 1 is fine. I have 2 currently. And then also your spotlight becomes very, very important. The quantity and the angle. Both of these are going to be super critical. And then later on, when you do start working towards actual glass cannon, working on the bonus becomes even more important. So just keep that in mind. That kind of begs the question, right? This is all basically the setup. So at what point should you consider working towards hybrid? Personally, I would say once you are able to consistently farm tier 12 until around 8,000 plus waves. At that point, you start working into hybrid. If you want to put it into a tournament kind of setup, you can look at it this way. I would say once you are getting closer and closer to promoting into Legends, you want to definitely start being involved with hybrid. So you can technically get to Legends as EHP, but it's a little bit more challenging, right? Once you are probably rank 10 or above consistently in champions, that might actually be a little bit too conservative. Maybe if you're rank 15 or above in champions, it would be a good time to start considering hybrid, if I had to guess. It's a little bit more challenging now for me to kind of guess based on tournaments because the tournaments have changed so much. Anyway, guys, that is basically going to cover it for the contents of this video. Like I said, it's very difficult to put here are the minimum requirements, because Quite frankly, hybrid's not actually a build, right? It's not a build, it's a type of build. In the same way that EHP is a type of build, or glass cannon is a type of build. So hybrid is just another type of build. Let's just do a brief summary here. We did cover quite a bit. We covered, obviously, what does hybrid actually mean, kind of going through like what we just discussed. We also covered what it will generally look like in terms of the cards, the labs, the modules, obviously, and most importantly, the workshop and enhancements, because a lot of it does kind of just come down to like the enhancements. We also kind of discussed when you should ideally transition to hybrid. And again, I cannot stress this enough. The timing of this will look different for everybody watching this video. So don't just listen to me saying, hey, once you are getting this amount of waves in tier 12, transition. You might be ready earlier. You might be ready a little bit later. Everyone's tower is a little bit different, right? So it's very important that you personally do some testing yourself, do a respec and just try it out. Do a respec, try it out, get yourself a baseline to kind of understand, okay, maybe I'm not quite ready. Or the opposite happens and you find out, oh crap, maybe I've been ready for quite a while and I just didn't know it. I hope that this video was encouraging to you guys, and like I said, if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to drop them down in the comments and I will do the best of my ability to kind of try to answer those for you guys. Join the Discord if you're not already in the Discord. We've got a Discord community with almost 4,500 people in it. It's absolutely insane. So join our Discord. We have a mentor program. It's been awesome. Link to that is in the description below. Likewise, if you guys purchase anything for the tower in the in-game app or the web store, please consider using my content creator code. My creator code is code 300. If you go to the web store, you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom, the same place where you can collect your once a week gems. It's right underneath that. And if you're in the in-game app, it is right here in the settings, the creator code. So you'll just type in my code 300 and it will say, boom, you are supporting me, Spartan. Just wanted to say a quick thanks to all of you guys who have been supporting the channel and allow me to do this full time. I really, really do appreciate you guys. You guys are absolutely insane. And with that, that is going to conclude the contents of today's video. But thank you guys so much for watching. And like always, I will see you guys later.